What if Anakin Skywalker killed Obi-Wan on Mustafar? Let's explore the depths of it in this video.
It's over, Anakin! I have the high ground!
We all know the high ground is the ultimate advantage. However, what if Obi-Wan was unable to defeat Anakin despite this tremendous advantage? This moment sealed Anakin's fate, doomed to become the faceless monster we all know and love. So what if Anakin acted differently? Welcome to Darth Theorist, where we explore the depths of the Force, analyze characters, and speculate on what could have been. Whether you're a Jedi Knight, a Sith Lord, or a curious traveler, prepare to ignite your imagination as we begin this journey. As the two former friends face off, Anakin sees his former master's defensive stance. He knew Obi-Wan's defense was impeccable. Instead, Anakin draws on the dark side and chokes his friend using the Force. Obi-Wan drops his lightsaber and clutches his throat. The two share one long look of pure hatred before Anakin clenches his fist and breaks Obi-Wan's neck. Stopping only to take Obi-Wan's lightsaber, Anakin hurries to Padme. He takes her to a medical station to recover from the birthing process. With Anakin by her side, he uses the Force to give her strength, allowing her to survive. Padme gives birth to a set of twins. However, the effort leaves her exhausted. Anakin decides to leave her there to heal while he returns to Coruscant. He says he is there to report to Palpatine that he defeated Obi-Wan. But he's there for another reason. Anakin's main motivation for turning to the dark side was to save his wife. Now that he knows she will recover, he has no further need for Palpatine. Stopping at the Coruscant guard barracks, Anakin gives only a single command: "Execute Order 65. With that done, he enters Palpatine's office.
Ah, young Skywalker. I take it this means Kenobi will trouble us no more.
No, I will hear his voice for the rest of my life. But don't worry, I will make sure you don't share that burden." Igniting Obi-Wan's lightsaber, he hurls it at Palpatine, who leaps off his desk to avoid being impaled. Raising his lightsabers, the two engage in a duel. Despite his age, Palpatine is an effective fighter, and his two lightsabers keep Anakin on the defense. However, Palpatine has not fully recovered from his encounter with Mace Windu and remains fatigued. Slowly, Anakin begins to push back against him, turning a defeat into a stalemate. As they lock swords, members of the Council Guard burst in with their weapons drawn.
Quickly, Commander! Skywalker has lost his mind! Stop him before he kills me!
With all due respect, sir, why would we obey a traitor?
Suddenly, the clones raise their blasters and fire into Palpatine's back, killing him instantly. As he falls to the ground, Anakin callously uses the Force to throw his body aside and uses his holodisc to contact the medical station. To his surprise, he is greeted by a medical droid instead of Padme. Anakin demands to see his wife, but the droid reveals that Padme left with her children. She left a message for Anakin, saying how much she loved him, but she cannot allow her children to be raised by a murderer. Instead, she left and took them far away, where he may never find her. As the message ends, Anakin goes into a frenzy, unleashing a wave of Force power that sends the troopers flying across the room. Anakin remains in the shattered office well into nightfall, not saying a word or eating. Instead, he contemplates what Padme said, not believing she truly meant that. He had cleansed the galaxy of Palpatine's evil and the Jedi's hypocrisy. Without them, the Force was in balance, as neither side could use it to oppress the other. Anakin becomes determined to prove his wife wrong. He declares himself Emperor, saying Palpatine died from his injuries against Mace Windu, and begins to reform the Empire. He cracks down on any abuse against the common people. Many corporations are punished, crime lords are persecuted, and corrupt senators are imprisoned. Anakin also takes an active role in squashing out the remaining CIS. This immediately makes him a popular figure amongst the people. While Vader was a symbol of fear, Anakin was a symbol of hope. Having come from the lowest rungs of society to become a Jedi and now the ruler of the galaxy, he's met with approval almost everywhere. As Anakin consolidates his rule, Padme decides to settle on Tatooine. Here she finds a home with Owen Lars and his wife. Luke and Leia grow up on the planet as farmers, never knowing who their father is, or of their Force abilities, as Padme fears that Anakin might kill them if they're discovered. Padme spends her time caring for the poor, freeing slaves, and trying to improve the conditions of the people there. She kept in touch with Bail Organa, who regularly updated her about Anakin's rule. Although it started with promise, things quickly turned bad when he attempted to rebuild the Outer Rim. As a former slave, Anakin believed that the worst abuses came from places outside the Republic's control and wanted to bring them under his Empire's rule. Many planets were so disillusioned by the Republic that they fiercely resisted any Imperial occupation. This was seen as treason by the young Emperor, who unleashed his full anger on the planets that resisted, wiping out entire cities and forcing them into the Empire. This would win Anakin the ire of different factions within the Outer Rim, like warlords, criminal organizations, and CIS holdouts, and burgeoning rebel factions. Fueling Anakin's desire to conquer the Outer Rim was that the remaining Jedi had gone into hiding there. For the Emperor, the remaining Jedi would threaten his rule, and he poured vast resources into tracking and killing them, only further agitating the citizens of the Outer Rim. Different factions waged a guerrilla war against the Empire, forcing them to fight for every inch of land. This made the wars exceptionally bloody and costly, draining the Empire's resources. From a war hero, Anakin became reviled by the people there, who saw him as a symbol of imperialism. These wars damaged Anakin's reputation domestically. He already faced issues with the elite of the core worlds because of his reforms, but seeing their money go to seemingly expensive and pointless wars only agitated them further. Unlike Palpatine, who had decades to master the art of politics, Anakin had no political experience and seemed unprepared to deal with the Senate. He didn't know how to compromise, appease, or negotiate with the elite, who despised him for his harsh laws. Many senators found ways to circumvent the laws, leading Anakin to crack down harder on them. Some wealthy individuals even began funding Anakin's enemies in the Outer Rim. This fueled Anakin's paranoia as he was convinced that his enemies were all around him, turning him into a despot. He began to execute anyone who refused to follow his laws. These executions became disturbingly common and sometimes even happened on the Senate floor. With the clone army completely loyal to him, Anakin slowly turns into a military dictator, forgetting the values and goals he had set out for himself in favor of conquering the galaxy to bring it under his control. In this situation, there was plenty of potential to wage a rebellion. Bail Organa attempted to recruit Padme into the growing resistance and developed a plan. While the burgeoning Rebel Alliance would keep Anakin's attention occupied, the twins and Bail Organa would journey to Dagobah to visit with Master Yoda. As they land on the swampy planet, Bail goes to speak to Yoda by himself, chatting over a hot meal.
A long time since I had guests, Senator.
Indeed, Master Jedi. I wish we were meeting under more pleasant circumstances.
Troubling news you have to share?
Troubling, but also with opportunity. Anakin is now more desperate than ever across the galaxy. The people in the Senate are turning on him. This is the perfect opportunity for the Jedi to return.
No longer a Jedi. I am.
Perhaps. But these two could be. But there is no one else to train them, but you.
Yes. Perhaps. Very well. Leave them here, and train them. I will.
With dissent within the Empire growing, Yoda begins the Skywalker twins' training. For the first time in many years, he feels a sense of purpose in his life, as he's given a chance to make amends for his mistakes in the Clone Wars. The training he subjects the two in is difficult and relentless. They would spend days on end practicing different lightsaber forms, meditating, or learning to harness the powers of the Force. Seeing the Jedi's failure with Anakin, Yoda has learned from his mistake and also makes time to train them on the living Force and to handle their emotions. Despite the difficulty, both show immense promise as Jedi, with Yoda noting some similarities with Anakin. Luke has his father's compassion for the weak and piloting skills, while Leia shows her father's headstrong attitude and charisma. After years of careful training, Yoda deems them ready and raises them to become Jedi Knights, and not a moment too soon. Shortly after their knighting, a transmission comes in from Bail Organa. He reveals that Anakin has built a massive superweapon called the Death Star, which can destroy entire planets. The rebels have barely managed to recover the plans of this weapon before making a hyperspace jump to Tatooine, but were pursued by Anakin. Yoda orders the twins to help the rebels. Leia would meet with the rebel ship to secure the plans, while Luke and Yoda would find Padme before Anakin. Once they have both, they will meet up and escape to the rebel base. They depart on separate ships, with Leia being the first to arrive on Tatooine. She arrives just as the Tantive 4 is captured by the Star Destroyer. As the first stormtroopers cut through the bulkhead, they expect to find a handful of frightened rebels. Instead, they are shocked to see a Jedi standing before them. With a powerful Force push, Leia knocks out the first wave of attackers before igniting her lightsaber. With Leia at their side, the rebels quickly gain the upper hand, and it seems that they might push the borders back. However, as the stormtroopers retreat, they're immediately immobilized by the Force, with a dozen of them being strangled to death for their cowardice. Anakin marches through the doorway, igniting his blood-red lightsaber. Meanwhile, on the planet below, Luke is pacing around their hut with Padme and Yoda. They encountered no trouble, but they heard nothing from Leia, who was supposed to give them the signal when it was clear for them to get off-world.
Nervous you are, young Skywalker.
Of course I am. Leia should have checked in by now. We should leave before that Star Destroyer begins deploying troops.
No. Given the job you were, as was your sister, do your duty and trust that she does hers. Such is the way of war.
We're not soldiers, Master.
No. Yet in war we find ourselves. Such was the case of the Jedi decades ago. And such is the case now.
Just as Yoda finishes speaking, the transmitter goes off. But instead of his sister, he's greeted by the sight of Emperor Anakin Skywalker. He stands tall in his dark robes, with a lightsaber in his hand, while Leia is kneeling on the other.
I know there is another Jedi here. If you want your friend alive, I suggest you reveal yourself. Be quick about it. I'm not a patient man.
As the transmission fades, the two Jedi look at each other.
This is a trap.
Most likely. But many ways for a Jedi to escape a trap there is. Come, let us meet the Emperor.
Hours later, Anakin is seated on the bridge of the Tantive 4, picking through the databanks for any information. Though he has the Death Star plans, he cannot bring himself to leave until he's dealt with the other Jedi. For Anakin, the Jedi Purge was his greatest accomplishment, but it cannot be complete until every Jedi is dead. Suddenly, his guards fly across the room as the doors swing open, revealing Luke.
All right, I've shown myself. Now release Leia.
What makes you think you're in a position to bargain? I have the Jedi. I have the Death Star plans. You have nothing to offer me.
Are you sure about that?
Suddenly, Padme steps in beside Luke and looks at her former husband. The anger and hatred building in Anakin melt away in an instant. He reaches out to his wife, but she pulls away. She's heard of all the horrible things he's done. At first, she denied them and said it wasn't him. But after years of living away from him, she realized Anakin was no longer the man she knew. For a moment, Anakin is too stunned to react. Shame crosses his expression, and it seems that he might turn his back on the dark side. Then, a wave of darkness washes over, and he ignites his lightsaber. Somehow, the Jedi have brainwashed his wife. He insists and rushes at Luke, who defends himself. Anakin rains powerful blows against the young Jedi who can barely defend himself. But as he struggles, Luke hears Padme and Leia's encouragement, and it strikes back. The normally defensive Luke now springs to the attack, launching a wave of vicious attacks that leave Anakin shocked. This victory is only temporary, as Anakin's experience shows itself, and with a vicious Force push, Luke is slammed against a console. Before Anakin can finish him off, a green blur darts across the room and leaps above Anakin, swinging a lightsaber and forcing Anakin to defend himself. The blur reaches Leia, revealing himself to be Yoda. He cuts off her restraints, and the two rush Anakin. Pressed from three sides, it's his turn to be on the defensive, slowly forcing him back as he struggles to defend himself. They drive him towards the ship's viewport. But Anakin isn't going down so easily. Seeing the two young Jedi still lack experience, he launches a flurry of attacks against them. One of Luke's parries come across a second too slow, and he screams as Anakin's weapon slices through his hand. Leia barely has time to react as she's shoved back and lifted off the ground. Anakin prepares to slay her, but Yoda's voice rings out.
Kill her, and you will snuff out your daughter, Skywalker.
Anakin lowers his weapon. You speak madness, old man. Despite that, his voice trembles and he looks at Leia again. For the first time, he begins to see the similarities. Padme then confirms Yoda's claim, revealing that these are indeed his children. Anakin's arm trembles as the realization hits him. He is seconds away from killing his daughter, and his lightsaber falls from his hand as he breaks down into sobs. As he looks around, Anakin sees things with fresh eyes, for the first time having the clarity to see what he's doing. He wails about the things he's done, the countless who have suffered. Leia rushes forward, pulling Luke to his feet. She insists they end this, but Luke hesitates. If this truly is their father, then shouldn't they save him? However, Anakin shakes his head. No. My destiny was to bring balance to the Force. At first, I thought that was by wiping out the Jedi. But now I see it's by creating you two. But it can only become balanced once I'm gone. Reluctantly, the two pick up their lightsabers and swing them across Anakin's neck, severing his head from his shoulders. With Anakin dead, there was no clear line of succession, and the Empire fell into disarray. This allowed the rebel forces to capture Coruscant. Padme receives a hero's welcome, being named Chancellor by the anti-Empire faction. Together with Bail Organa, they begin dismantling the corrupt institutions of the Empire. Meanwhile, Yoda and the Skywalkers return to the Jedi Temple to begin training a new generation of Jedi Knights. That's our theory. The Star Wars universe is a galaxy filled with exciting stories and possibilities, and we love exploring them. If you want to accompany us on this journey to a galaxy far, far away, then please like, share, and subscribe to our channel.